You Booked It, episode 62. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainment professionals 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to have a successful entertainment career. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainment professionals. We're here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community, where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app, where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating, and review. And now, let's do this. Okay, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Sean Viator. Are you ready for this, Sean?
I was born ready, Dane.
Of course you were. Sean grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where he had the honor of performing in 2 original Debbie Allen productions and worked closely with many well-known choreographers like Mark Meisner, Stacy Tukey, and Mia Michaels. He received his BFA in dance with a minor in business admin from the University of Arizona. Credits include Billboard Music Awards with Christina Aguilera and Demi Lovato, I'm Ready music video for Sam Smith and Demi Lovato, Christmas Spectacular starring the Radio City Rockettes, a featured dancer for a movie promo of Isn't It Romantic starring the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Skeleton Crew for Netflix Eurovision Song Contest The Story of Fire Saga, Before the Wedding pilot for ABC, Universal Studios Japan commercial, Mike's Hard Lemonade commercial, Steve Wynn's Showstoppers choreographed by Marguerite Derricks, Black and White music video for Todrick Hall and Pentatonics, Nails, Hair, Hips, Heels music video for Todrick Hall, the Latin Grammys for Alessia Cara and Logic. He was dance captain for Hansel and Gretel with the LA Opera, Tuacahn, Don Arden's Jubilee, Cirque du Soleil, and Odyssey Dance Theater. Sean has also taught at Millennium Dance Complex and AMDA College and Conservatory, Los Angeles. Sean, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Fill in the gaps. Who you are, where you're currently calling home, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry.
I currently reside in the beautiful, sunny Los Angeles, California. And I always think it's really funny when I hear it out loud, because growing up, never thought that I would live in California. I always thought I was more of a New York dancer. I kind of put myself in that box. But to be honest, it was the scariest but the best move of my life to move to California. I love the weather. I love having my car. I love that there's the beach or hiking. There's just so many options. And honestly, it's been, I think, dance-wise, what's caused me to grow the most, because every day you're ready for something different. It's not like where you're in a show where it's the same thing every day. One day you're auditioning for an artist, the next day you're auditioning for a movie, the next day you're auditioning for a music video. So you kind of have to be ready for anything. And so I think that's been what's very exciting, is there's always something happening and you always kind of have to stay on your toes and be ready for anything.
Absolutely. I love all that. And you're right. The weather out west is so good. And I love that whole outdoor lifestyle. I love New York. I went to school in Boston, but you know what? I grew up in Montana and lived in Vegas for a long time. I'm much more of a West Coast guy, and I've just discovered that through living my life.
Truly. I've been on the West Coast since college. I went to school in Arizona, and then I lived in Utah for 8 or 9 months, and then moved to Vegas after that. So I've kind of been on the West Coast too. And then I did a 4-month stint in New York when I worked at Radio City. And it was a great, I mean, that was a great insight of what it would truly feel like to live in New York City. But, I will say 4 months was good for me in New York City. I was kind of ready to get back to the warm weather and my cars.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move on to our next section here. And look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with everyone?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. God, there's a million and seven quotes that I literally live by, but I think one that I always go back to is actually a quote that I used for my graduation in college.
Yeah.
And it was the Mikhail Baryshnikov quote when he said that I do not try to dance better than anyone, I just try to dance better than myself. And I think that's something that resonates with me because not even just as a dancer, but as a person, especially with social media, I think it's so easy to compare yourself to other people. And we compare the worst parts of ourselves to the best parts of other people. And it's just kind of like this constant feedback loop of just like, you end up in a bad place. Like it comparing yourself to someone usually never ends well. And so I think for me, it's been kind of like a good reminder that as long as like everyone's on their own timeline, we're all on our own journey, our own path. So I think that as long as we just make sure each day we're doing little things to better ourselves so that we're becoming better, but only in terms of what we're doing as individuals, then I think that's all we can do. And I think that I've done the best and I've been the happiest when I'm really tunnel vision on that thought of just focusing on myself and my growth and kind of putting on blinders in comparison to other people.
Yeah, I love that quote. I have not heard that one, but it's so true. And that comparison rabbit hole that we can go down on in social media, it is crazy and it can be really detrimental. And you know what I think is I love that you said we are comparing the worst part of ourselves to the best part of others. And that is so unfair to ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been such a interesting journey, and I know you're the same way. Like we didn't really grow up with social media, and it's been interesting to see like I feel like I've almost as I've gotten older, I have flashes of being the most insecure I've ever been, and then being the most secure I've ever been in different aspects and areas of life. Like some aspects I'm like so secure and so confident. And then in other aspects, one day I'll feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just not a good dancer today. Or, I'll be watching this person in class or at an audition and I'll be like, they're so much better than me. And it's so crazy because I never used to be that way. And then when I moved to LA, I realized I was just comparing myself to so many people. And everyone's good at something different. And the person that you're watching and comparing yourself to could be thinking the same thing about you. It's been so funny because I'll notice me comparing myself to people and then it'll make me feel really bad to where I'll be in a class or an audition and completely mess up because I've put myself in a vulnerable place of comparing myself to others. And then I leave and I'm mad at myself because I'm like, I know I'm a better dancer than what I just showed. Why am I doing this to myself? And it's that whole rabbit hole. But then I just learned that the person you're comparing yourself to, they do the same thing with other people, or maybe even they compare themselves to you. It's like everyone sadly kind of does it. And I think it's just about being aware of when you do it and being like, no, 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 we're not going to do that.
Absolutely. And you're right. And it takes maturity and some experience. And hopefully, through this podcast and interviews and speaking to people like you, can help put a stopper on that and educate some people that are newer to the industry because it does. We've had to learn it through trial and error. And to have the maturity to realize, oh, I am getting inside my head right now. I am going down the rabbit hole that I need to stay away from right now. And I need to be focused on me, my talents, what I'm doing, and present the best self to this panel or whoever that you are presenting to.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, I just in something I've learned, like you said, it's just knowing what you have to offer and what you bring to the table and that no one else is like you. And So instead of you seeing somebody do something and you maybe trying to be like, oh, well, that seems to work. So like maybe I should try to do that. It's like you just be 100% secure in yourself and what you have to bring to the table because there's no one else like you. You're only you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That's such great insight. And let's move on to this section. Now, Sean, of course, you are an entertainer. I am an entertainer. And I think that you would agree this industry is one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries in existence. And you know as well as I that in order to create and have a successful career in this industry like you're having now takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, yeah, there is an outrageous amount of fun and excitement doing what we do, there are also our fair share of obstacles, challenges, and failures we are going to experience and we're going to have to move forward through. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
So I love this question because it reminds me of a quote, which I also love. And I don't know if this is a direct quote of it, but it's like, in life, you need three things: a wishbone, a funny bone, and a backbone. And I think you need all three of those in the dance industry, but especially a backbone. If you're not tough, if you're not resilient, if you don't have tenacity, it's going to be very hard to be a dancer in this industry because we all love dance at the end of the day. That's why we're dancers, that's why we're artists, that's why we do what we do. But sadly, when it's your business, when it's what you do, there's things that happen that you can't control. And I think that was a thing I had to learn for myself is when you're auditioning for a job, a show, whatever, there's so many things that go on behind the scenes where they're trying to fit all these pieces of a puzzle together. And sometimes you're not the piece that they're looking for. You just don't fit the job, whether it's your height, your hair color, your eye color. There's so many factors that go into it to make up that thing, and sometimes you're just not what it's looking for. And like when I was training, when I went to school, it's not something you can really be taught, that one day you're going to audition and your talent won't be enough. There are some things that are just beyond your control, which is sad. And that's a hard pill to swallow. You can't really teach somebody to have that backbone and to be able to swallow that, and you get knocked down and be like, you know what, I'm going to keep going. So I would say for me, just having the tenacity to be able to get knocked down and stand back up and be like, you know what, I'm going to keep doing this, I'm going to keep showing up, I'm going to keep getting better. So there were so many jobs, Dan, that I auditioned for that I didn't get the first time I auditioned. And some of my resume, like Showstoppers, for example, I think I auditioned for that show 5 times before I actually booked it.
Yeah.
There are so many jobs. Radio City, I didn't get it the first time I auditioned. There are so many jobs that I wouldn't have had on my resume if I didn't just say, you know what, like, I know this is going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. So I think just finding that happy place of I love this, it's gonna happen. I just need to not let this deter me from my goal, and I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna work hard. It's a hard lesson to learn, and really you're the only person that can teach that to yourself. No one can teach you how to be resilient. You just have to like stomach the loss and be like, you know what, I'm gonna get back up and I'm gonna keep doing this because I love it. I truly think that's for me one of the number one rules because I've seen sadly so many people just stop being a dancer, stop being an entertainer because it's such a hard thing to face. It's such a hard thing to feel. And as entertainers, we're so emotional. We feel things so deeply. It's so hard not to take things personally. So I really think that's my number one thing is just keep showing up, keep trying.
Absolutely. I love that. You're right. It's the perseverance. Keep doing it. Keep getting up. Learn from your failures and keep moving forward. And let's move on to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
Okay, so I'm gonna do both of those if that's okay. So the
Absolutely.
the first one was I remember my dance studio in Baton Rouge, the Francis Academy of Dance. My teachers sat me down in the office, and I think it was like either my 8th grade year or my freshman year of high school. I had only been dancing for like 4 years, and they were like, "You're really, really good. You have a lot of potential. You just need to focus." They were like, "You truly could do this as a career. You just really need to put the work in and decide, is this what you're gonna do for the rest of your life? We really think you could be a dancer." And I was like, I like never really thought about it. And so that just kind of put the seed in my brain like, okay, maybe this is something I would want to do for a career. And then from there, it really translated into everything. Like, I started working really hard. I started being very serious in class. I also started getting better grades in school. I was a better student. It just really translated kind of into everything. Which then, the rest was history. In high school, dance really was my life. I started like competing, and from that moment on, it was just kind of like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm doing. I was traveling, going to different dance conventions and competing, and so that was kind of like the defining moment in my life where I was like, okay, dance is what I want to do.
Love
And
it.
then I think kind of like as an artist, in my career at least, there was a moment at the Billboard Music Awards. It was just like this moment that I had where I was like, this is my career. This is where I'm meant to be, on this stage with these artists, working for a choreographer I had never thought I'd get to work for, Taylor Swift's in the audience. Like, it was just like, this is a career moment for me. And like, growing up as a competition kid and then going to college where we were kind of trained to be like concert dancers, I didn't really ever think or know that I would be dancing for artists. And I think that was a really cool moment. I had almost sold myself short of that dream before it even happened. And so that was just a really big moment where I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love that you said, I feel like I almost sold myself short before anything had even happened. And I think us as humans tend to do that way more often than we like to give it credit for. And I love that you chose to keep moving forward and pushing it and seeing where this journey took you, because unless it has happened, it hasn't happened. I mean, that seems pretty obvious to say, but don't put preconceived notions into your head. If you want something, go pursue it. See what happens. Go down the journey. Until you do it, until you give it a go, you have no point of reference to have an opinion. So go have the journey, see what happens.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are really scared to truly take that leap of faith and to like make a change and be uncomfortable. And so me moving to LA was completely uncomfortable because it was this whole realm of dance I had never explored and never thought I would explore. And so like, for example, me dancing for an artist, me being in music videos, that was like something I almost didn't even entertain because I had put myself in a box of like, I'm only this kind of dancer. I belong in New York. I should only do this. And so I almost didn't even try it, and especially because it scared me. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know. We have all these preconceived notions, and luckily, shout out to my parents. They're like the best ever. But they've always been 100% down and supportive for anything I do. And I was like, you guys, I think I need to move to California because it's scared. Like the thought of it scares me. But I think that that's where I'm going to grow the most as an artist. And they were just like, of course, we support you, whatever you want to do, we're here for you. So really truly with their blessing, I just made the leap. And I mean, it was hard, probably the hardest years of my life ever. And the doubt, the uncertainty, but then you get those moments where you're like, wow, I'm doing something I never thought I would do. But you have to be able to confront that uncomfortableness and that conflict and kind of go through those muddy waters to get to the other side.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think I might go so far as to say that if you aren't a little bit uncomfortable, if you aren't a little bit scared with what you're trying to do, then you're not pushing hard enough.
Exactly.
Great. Well, let's piggyback on all of that and let's talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the audition and callbacks, if they happen to be a part of it. What was going on in your life, and what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
Okay, so I kind of have a tie, if that's okay. So I would say Radio City was like, in terms of production shows, probably my number one because I auditioned for it. So this is kind of leading me to why I moved to California. In 2017, that was the first time I auditioned for the show. And I remember I went to New York and I truly had no idea what to expect because I had never seen the show. But you watch the Rockettes at the Thanksgiving Day show, and I just knew, it was more of a technical style, and so I was like, I think this is something I'd like to try. And so I was like, if I book this show, I'm going to move from Las Vegas, where I was living at the time, to New York full time. And if I don't book that show, then I'll move to Los Angeles and give that a try. So I was kind of putting this like pressure on myself because it was kind of like determining where I'm going to spend the rest of my life,
Yeah.
which was a lot of pressure. Plus, I flew, from Las Vegas all the way to New York, so I think I was just really nervous, and then I also didn't know what to expect. So I had all these expectations. I had people being like, "Oh my God, you're gonna book it. You're perfect for that job." Like there were just all these things in the back of my mind, and I was just a nervous wreck. And I ended up making it to the end, which for your first year is even amazing just to make it to the end of that audition because there's like you know, I don't know how like 150 guys maybe that auditioned for it, and maybe like anywhere from 15 to 18 make it to the end. So
Yeah,
like I
wow.
should have even, and I was very thankful to even make it to the end. And I ended up not booking it that year. And of course I was devastated and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible dancer and whatnot. So then I obviously winded up moving to California, and that was like what I think it was the best decision I ever made. So, in hindsight, everything works out for a reason. I did an audition the next year, and then this past year, 2019, I was on the phone with my mom, and I was like, I think I'm gonna give it one more try. And she was like, Yeah, I think you should. And I was like, you know what? If I don't book it this time, like that's it. I know it's not meant to be, but I think I'm going to audition one more time. So this time I went in. I was still nervous because I was like, what if I get cut sooner than I did the first time?
Right.
But I at least like knew what to expect. And then I'll never forget. I was on the plane flying to Minnesota to teach actually, and I had a voicemail from a New York number, and I was like, wonder who it is. And then I checked my voicemail and it was like, hi, this is so and so from Radio City. I would just love if you could call me back. And I remember being like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my
Yeah.
God. So I was waiting like for 10 minutes for her to call me back, being like, I wonder if this is it. I wonder if this is it. And I was literally in the airport when she called me back and I just started crying because I was like, I can't believe like it was just one of those moments where it's such a dream come true. And the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into something just to have that one instant where you're just like, this is worth it. Like this is what I've dreamed of doing. Like I can't believe I can
Yeah.
do this. And so I would say that's probably like that was truly one of my number ones, just because like it literally put so much work in to get to that point, and it was such a beautiful experience. The show was incredible. And then quickly, my number two, I keep a journal because I believe in manifesting things and recording my thoughts. And at the beginning of 2020, I was like, okay, these are all the jobs that I want to try to do this year. These are things that I want to do more of. And a music video, like a big music video for a choreographer, was on one of the ones that I wrote down. And I remember I was flying back to Los Angeles after being in New York for 4 months. And I was kind of like, had a little bit of anxiety of, oh no, I've been gone for so long. I hope I didn't like mess myself up by being in New York for so long. And I remember I landed on the tarmac at LAX and had an email from my agent being like, hey, I just submitted you for this music video. There's no audition. It's what they call a direct book, where they just submit a bunch of people, and then the choreographer and the director pick like who they want. And I was like, oh my God, there's no way. And it was this choreographer, Sean Bankhead, who choreographs for Missy Elliott, Normani, like somebody I would love to work with, but again, kind of like never thought I would get to work with him. And I was like, also, I literally like I had just landed back in LA. I was like, there's no way luck is gonna be on my side this much. And then the next day I got an email that I booked it. And the
Wow.
next day I was literally in rehearsal. And I was just like, this I never get this lucky. This never happens to me. But I think it's just like the work that you put in doesn't go away. Just because I was in New York for 4 months doesn't mean that the work I put in for 2 years in Los Angeles before that just went away. It doesn't disappear. So I think that as long as you work really hard, it's going to show and people are going to notice and it doesn't just go away.
Absolutely. And I had actually it was my agent when I was living in New York City, and I remember I got a contract out of the city, and I was nervous. And he said to me, he's like, "Don't you worry." He's like, "New York is not going anywhere. When you come back, it's all going to be the same. Don't worry." And I think that was an incredible piece of advice that he gave, and I think it's so true because we do get caught up in, "Oh, I've spent so much time here. I can't just leave the city for this great opportunity because I've done all this other groundwork here." And the thing is, you just have to look within yourself and say, what do I really feel is the right move? And to listen to that, because the city, whatever the market is that you have been establishing yourself in, it's not going away. It's going to be there when you come back. And those relationships that you've developed will still be there.
Absolutely. I think that's such a good point. New York, LA, Vegas, like they're those cities they're not going anywhere. The industry's not going anywhere. And I think yeah, we get like that anxiety about if I go somewhere and take this job, I'm gonna be missing out or people are gonna forget about me. And it's like actually if anything, like you're gonna be more valuable when you come back because you're leaving for this job, you're leaving for this experience. And people are going to be like, oh, wow, he just got back. He just did this. So, yeah, I think we have these false ideas in our head that, we can't leave ever and, we're scared to. But if it feels right, it's right.
Absolutely. And I love that you said, you're in reality, you're going to come back more valuable because you've had a great experience. You've grown as an artist doing whatever that project might have been. And now you get to come back and leverage that experience and put it into where you actually have built up those relationships and those networks. I love that. Well, let's take a moment then to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And of course, it's a weird time. We are amidst this global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
That's such a great thing. I've been lucky to work on a few projects during quarantine. Todrick Hall kind of did like a quarantine parody of Nails, Hair, Hips, Heels called Mask, Glove, Soaps, Scrubs. And it was kind of like a revisit of the music video, but there were like four of us that were in it, four dancers, and we all just filmed it in our apartments and sent it to them, and they edited it together. One of my good friends, Katie Tate, she's on the creative team for Nappy Tabs. She was choreographing the opening number of an award show that ended up having to be held virtually. And she was choreographing the opening number. So she asked me to assist her. And that was fun because obviously it was like, I think it was 15 people and it was like a mix of dancers, actors, musicians. And so they had to go to every single person's house, the director did, and film every single person. But he
Wow.
needed me to record 15 different versions that each individual was doing. So I had to learn all 15 different versions of the number. And
Whoa.
then they sent that to the musicians, the actors, the dancers. They learned it and then they had to go to their house and film individually each 15. It's been definitely interesting. I think things will definitely be more virtual in the future for sure. Whether it's self tapes and not in person auditions or them shooting smaller things with less amount of people. It's going to be an interesting future, but I definitely think virtual is going to stay around. for a while.
For sure. I love that insight. And I love that you've been doing projects where they've just been making it work. Very cool. And it is time to move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round. I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Oh gosh, yes, I think so.
Okay, first question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
I think it was growing up in the South. I got made fun of a lot. So I would say that for sure.
For sure. Second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Trust your gut, follow your intuition, and you're usually right the first time.
Love it. And we even hit on that a few times earlier in the interview. Third question. What is something that is working for you right now? Or if you'd like to go pre-COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
Training, training, training. Class is a great way to meet choreographers. It's a great way to meet new friends. And it's a great way to just keep you inspired.
Love it. And the fourth question, what is your best resource? Whether that is a book, a movie, a YouTube video, a podcast, maybe a piece of technology that you found is helping your career right now.
One of my best friends, Morgan Larson, has a podcast called Morganized, where she interviews famous like choreographers, and that is a really great tool for me to kind of like listen to people like Mandy Moore, Marguerite Derricks, and they just talked about their career and how they made it work. And then I also love, sorry, it's actually called Totally Unmorganized. And I also love watching old YouTube videos of Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, Gene Kelly, kind of like that old golden age Hollywood. It's super inspiring to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fifth question, if you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
I would keep things the same. I think I learned everything as I went, and I think I've been happy with how everything's gone so far. And yeah, I it's not been perfect, but I don't know if I would change anything, honestly.
Great. And the last question, what is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in this industry you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Don't put your loyalty into one thing, person, or business too much. And it kind of goes along with don't take things personally, because I know as a person, I get very loyal and sometimes I end up being disappointed. So enjoy things as they happen, be a great employee, but just know that sometimes things happen the way they happen. Just learn to not take things personally.
For sure. And to wrap up this baby, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
I really am just on Instagram and YouTube. My Instagram is at my first and last name, Sean Viator, Seanviator. You can find me on YouTube where I have some of my class videos. Just search my name. And that's really it. I'm not on too much other stuff.
Yeah, that's great. And for everyone listening, I've put the links to both his Instagram and YouTube in the description of this episode so you can check them out easily. And Sean, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on today.
Oh, thank you, Dane. It's been so great catching up. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share my knowledge and wisdom.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.